just literally heartbreaking. We've been here all morning watching this bulldozer, this excavator just pile over what was left of people's lives. Clothes, pictures, special things, food, you know, and watching them pick up whole tents and just dump them in a dump truck. And it's just absolutely heartbreaking. Absolutely heartbreaking. You know, was saying, you know, to be at the corner of two highways, and that's the last place that you have to lay your head. And then even that little place you can't be anymore. You're taken away from even this spot, which is the last place you've just been shoved to. It's just absolutely heartbreaking. And how painful, you know, what we've said we've watched for 2 years during a pandemic, and I know how so many people have talked about how stressful it is, and just the grief and all the things, and losing people. And imagine living that whole time during the pandemic with no place to call your home but a tent. And now even that's getting bulldozed. And it's just absolutely painful. How depressing it must feel to just be rejected time and time again. Going on for a long time. This has happened. We've seen it happen time and time again. Just happened over on Sweeten Creek Road. We got a call in 20-degree weather because a camp right there by the off-ramp where some people who are really disabled have been trying to stay safe, and then their camp was bulldozed, the trees cut down. People just continually being pushed around and forced out. So, you know, imagine you just got the word, you know, that the shelter at the Ramada is not happening. What that feels like. There's the tent being taken. So that 2 nights ago, somebody was laying their head in this tent, and now it's been just taken away. Just a couple weeks ago, we were using an excavator. It's very similar to this to grade the land of the Beloved Village to build houses for people, and that's what we could be using these tools for instead of this. So to watch this tool be used as a tool of basically destruction rather than a tool to build up and uplift people. And those choices are choices being made, you know, right now in our city. Are we using the tools for life? You know, we're creating deeply affordable homes for people with this same tool. And here people are demolishing people's only shelter. Clothes going in right there.
James, you're saying his car braking, Amy.
It is totally heartbreaking. James was here yesterday with our street medic team, and just, you know, people are literally scrambling. Our street medic team was out doing outreach and got calls from this camp from people here saying that the police had come and they were in people's tents and that people were being told to leave. And so the street medic team rushed down here and tried to help people as best as they could, as they always do, and it's just gut-wrenching. James literally breaks my heart. Just as soon as we got here, I'm just watching this, just tears were just pouring down my face.
And Donna Klein say, yes, just hear about the Ramada Hotel news.
Yeah. Too. Yeah, imagine, you know, we were just talking about that, you know, that people had just heard this one thing that they could hang on to that could be hopeful is more emergency shelter, and now that's gone. So imagine getting that bad news and right on top of it getting the news that you had to leave here and then it was going to be 28 degrees and trying to gather what meager possessions you could take with you and go somewhere else where you know that they're going to come for you again, because that's what they keep doing. They keep coming and saying you can't be here and you can't be here and you can't be here. And
yeah, this morning we drive in the 240 and we saw there was ice in the grass. So yeah. One of the coldest days that we haven't experienced happened yesterday and today in the morning, and it was the day then people were removed from this camp.
Yeah, it's just heartbreaking that we would do that to human beings. And yeah, so these folks, you know, people who have been, you know, if we look at all these systems, if we look at the housing system and we look at, you know, our city and county right now are getting a settlement for opioids because whole corporations and doctors colluded to make a big profit off folks who are now suffering. And we just look at how all these systems have colluded to be able to, you know, be making lots of money off the suffering of people. And that's what we see time and time again. And we can make different choices as a city, as a county, as a community, as a people worldwide, but we have to make those decisions. You know, I constantly, you know, my daughter, I was picking her up from school and we were walking with my twins, and there's one of our friends laying on the sidewalk, and I sat down to talk to him, and I wonder what goes through their little minds, that we as human society would do this to people. It just is heartbreaking. I heard another dad talking about that, you know, driving down the highway with his child, and his child is asking all these questions about, Daddy, why is that? Why are we doing that to people?
Amber Banks is saying,
hey, Amber.
And they still don't have any code purple shelter. What is the option that people have right now?
They just did open 2 code purple shelters. Again, there was weeks of 20-degree weather where there was no code purple shelter. But they now have shelter for men, some men at ABCCM, and then some women and children at Salvation Army. It's not nearly enough. We know that we don't have enough shelter beds. We don't even have enough shelter beds for the people that were here, which, you know, there's probably more than 50 people here. And that's just one spot where there are people living. We have people literally living all over the county. People in cars, people in tents. There's people, you know, I saw 2 people laying in a doorway this morning, and just countless people. That's why we need
people in wheelchairs.
We saw somebody on crutches today getting out of a tent, and just God getting up off the ground and trying to get up on crutches.
So Michelle said, who approved this? The city. He's asking, who can we contact?
Yeah.
So I guess what is the thing that people can do?
So certainly contact the city. So I'll tell you the 2 groups that are here. So we don't know what went on behind the scenes, how these decisions were made, but this is the Department of Transportation and the Asheville Police Department are here. So we know that you can contact the city and NCDOT, because those are the two people that are here that are overseeing this. So NCDOT, if you want to look on our Facebook post from yesterday, we have the contact information for the division engineer here. You can certainly contact the State Secretary of Transportation as well, who's over all of NCDOT. And then contact City Council, our city manager. So those contacts are on that post from yesterday. You can just contact Asheville NC Council at asheville.nc.gov. We'll go to all of council. Again, you can contact Mark Gibbs, who's the Division 13 NCDOT division engineer, or the State Secretary of Transportation. And we urge you to reach out to those folks and just say, this is not the answer. This is not what we should be doing to human beings. Just gut-wrenching to watch this.
Yeah, and this happened many times every year. Only, I guess the only reason and a lot of people know about this campsite is because it was very public, was very close to downtown, in a very high public. So.
And this is just a fraction. Let me say that again. Just a fraction of the people that are on the streets of Asheville and Buncombe County. And so you think this is 35 tents, a little over 50 people right here in just this one spot. So we need to sound the alarm, and are sounding the alarm that this is happening in our community, and that we desperately need emergency shelter. We desperately need support in creating housing. And these are decisions. Again, these are decisions that people are making, and that we can change. Because again, this is taxpayer money that's paying for all of this. All of us are paying for this. And this is just absolutely heartbreaking. Absolutely heartbreaking. So you heard one of our friends that's just angry. He was just speaking to the guy that's driving this bulldozer. I'm assuming asking about some of his stuff. So pain and anger run together. And I watched him using this machine. This is something probably better done by hand, but not wanting to touch it. So this is part of what we do, is we don't want to touch suffering. We don't want to see suffering, and so we use machines to get rid of the sight. And that's what's happening. There's somebody's blankets, so this is the last thing about over here that'll probably go in. And somebody's coat. I'm assuming they'll get next. I see bottles of lotion. And somebody maybe was writing in a journal, writing down appointments. So just little things, and so many people that are watching here, James and Amber, and I'm sure there's others that have been here that know what it feels like to have slept on the streets of Asheville, and know what it feels like, to get these messages of rejection, and just to have bad news after bad news after bad news, and to be pushed away constantly, and what that does to a human soul. And like you say, right here at the holidays, when it's a time where we should be caring for each other, to get this message, I think, does great trauma to the human spirit. And
Destiny is saying, what can we do to help?
Contact our city. Contact our city and say, this is not the way. This is not the way. You know, we talked about, you know, there's all these plans afoot for housing, long-term housing, maybe, that's coming about. We don't know. We're going to study shelter again while people are dying. And yet, in the meantime, we bulldoze people's camps. We bulldoze the meager place that they have to lay their head at night. So Dorothy Day said this, a mentor, a predecessor in this work of love and hospitality. If you don't know her, certainly look up Dorothy Day. But Dorothy Day said this, that our means and ends have to match to be in integrity. So if we're saying we want to end homelessness, and we're saying that we care about people in our community, and that's our end goal, and yet our means to get here are through bulldozing people's tents, then our means and ends don't match. We're not in integrity. And the way that we treat people now matters. And if our end goal is to do right by these people and to make sure that everybody in our community has a home, then the route to get there, the journey to get there, has to be through that same ethic of love and compassion, and not through an ethic of destruction and trauma, because this is creating trauma. Certainly trauma for these human beings that were staying here. But this is trauma that's going into the literal ground of our city. They're cutting the literal ground, and I believe this stuff goes in here in a real spiritual way, that we are continuing to put, you know, toxin, trauma, poison into the very ground of our being, the very ground that we walk on in this city. Michelle, it's a hot hand right there.
Oh yeah. Michelle is saying that's usually what happened, at least here in Atlanta.
Yeah. So some of you know that I was in Atlanta. I went to school in Atlanta. I've been doing this work with people on the streets and people living in poverty. This will be 30 years coming up this year. And I saw this happening in Atlanta as well. Absolutely. And it's become the way that we do this.
Yeah, we hide the problem. We move the problem from one place to another one because we don't want to see it. We don't want to solve it. We only want to not be annoyed by the visual explanation of the problem every day.
And dig it up and dump it out of sight. That's exactly what it is. And I think that, you know, we see this in communities across the country. The National Coalition for the Homeless has come out with a new report just in the last few weeks about how people on the street are being criminalized and dispersed in communities across the country. This is how we are handling this. A problem of our own creation. This is created by public policy. I can tell you in 1979 that the Housing and Urban Development budget for the federal government was $81 billion, and we were building housing with that money. Just a few years after that, in the early 80s, it was $18 billion. It was cut. So it went from $81 billion to $18 billion in just a couple of years. Then we deinstitutionalized people from mental institutions, saying that we would provide care in the community. We never did. None of that ever, all of those policy commitments were lies, and none of that was followed through. We've slashed mental health time and time again. We had corporations creating the opioid disaster that we have now, traumatizing whole communities and families and people, human beings, and providing no care. You know, I've talked to multiple people this week that want treatment. There's nowhere for them to go. They're waiting. Even people with the most opportunities and resources, veterans, are, you know, they're having to wait. Asking, you know, weeks ago, and still no word on whether they can go into treatment.
Yeah, and you think like even people like us, and we know a lot of people here in the community. We look for a place to rent, and take us long time to find a place to rent in a way that we can afford. Imagine a lot of the people that just move to the city, or that they don't have that many connections that we have. How hard it is to find a place to live, and something that you can afford, because everything is very, very expensive. We find houses that was $2,000, $3,000. Who can afford this kind of money when you are working in a living wage or below the living wage salaries?
Yeah, so we're watching again the fallout of that. You know, the fallout of all of these systems that are really twisted, systems that should be used to uplift people and create community and make sure that everybody living in our community is thriving, and these systems literally are watching the destruction of people's lives, and making that happen more quickly. So it's really just gut-wrenching how that's happening. You know, we got a call a week ago from a mother of 5 children. She was asking for toys for her kids for Christmas, because we're sharing toys with families, and she let us know that she's going to be evicted on December 31st, and we're trying to help them. But I bring that up to say there's so many people in our community that are going through that right now, where they literally have nowhere to go with their family. We have whole families living in cars. We know people, you know, I know somebody with 2 jobs right now that can't find a place to live here and living in their car. And so many people who are suffering, and we know we can do so much better. We have resources in this community. We have lots of resources in this community so that this doesn't have to happen. So they're leaving. I guess that's the end. And I think the question is, how many more people have to die? How many more people have to suffer like this?
And if somebody want to know how feels, like Fidjit already have here in the comments a testimonial of how it feels to be in the streets.
How it feels to just be pushed away and rejected and treated like this in the midst of your suffering. It's just a shame that we would do this to human beings, to our fellow neighbors in this community.